Okay, are you ready for this? We did a deep dive into the Guy Magnet online program, and let's just say there's a lot to unpack.
It's quite a program.
This program says it can teach women how to make men completely obsessed with them.
Yeah, using these special mesmerizing questions.
Right, and they make some pretty bold claims.
That's for sure. The whole thing is heavy on sales tactics and big promises and stories.
Lots of anecdotes. So I bet you're wondering, does this stuff actually work? And is it even ethical?
Those are the big questions we had too.
Right. So let's get into it. What's the central premise here?
Okay, so the program claims that these questions can trigger a flood of obsession chemicals in a man's brain.
Obsession chemicals.
Yeah, that's what they call them. And it basically makes him crave the woman who asked them.
Like he gets addicted to her.
Exactly. They actually compare it to cocaine addiction.
Well, okay. That's a pretty intense comparison.
It is. And they try to back it up with some sciencey stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they talk about how these questions supposedly stimulate the nucleus accumbens.
Nucleus what now?
The nucleus accumbens. It's the part of the brain that's all about pleasure and reward. So they're saying that these questions basically hijack that part of the brain.
So the guy feels good when he's with the woman who asked the questions.
Right, and he wants more of that feeling.
Interesting. But do they have any actual proof that this works? Like any scientific studies or anything?
Not really. They mostly rely on stories and testimonials, like this one woman named Natalie.
Natalie.
Yeah, they say she went from being completely overlooked by men to being a total man magnet after using these techniques.
And she did this just by asking questions.
That's what they claim.
Yeah.
They even give specific examples like how she won back a guy who had publicly rejected her and how she revitalized her marriage.
Wow, that's a pretty compelling story. I can see why women would be drawn to that.
It definitely plays on those universal desires for love and connection.
Right, everyone wants to feel loved and desired. But it also makes you wonder about the ethics of it all.
Definitely.
Is it really okay to use language in this way to influence someone's emotions?
That's the big question. Is it manipulation? Or is it just clever communication?
I mean, are we talking about mind control here?
Well, they do use some pretty strong language. They talk about thought hypnosis and invisible commands.
Okay, that sounds a little creepy.
It definitely raises some red flags. And that's something we'll have to explore more as we dig deeper into this program.
Agreed. So let's get into the specifics. What kind of questions are we talking about here?
So they have these different categories of questions, each with its own promised effect.
Like what?
Well, there's fanatic addiction, which is supposed to make a man crave you like a drug.
Okay, that one's a little intense.
Then there's we belong together, which is supposed to trigger those feelings of commitment.
Interesting. And what else?
Oh, and then there's invisible command, which is supposed to make a man your devoted love slave, basically.
A love slave.
Really?
Yeah, they don't hold back on the dramatic language.
Wow. Okay, so they're making some pretty big promises, but how do they actually deliver on these promises? What do these questions actually look like? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Let's dive into some of these question categories and see what they're all about.
All right, I'm ready to get mesmerized. Okay, so let's start with hook and entice. What's the deal with this one?
Well, this category is all about making a man obsessed with you practically overnight. Like he's waking up to tons of messages from you saying he's in love and wants to prove himself to you.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
It is. They really play up that fantasy of being completely adored.
I mean, who wouldn't want that kind of attention, right?
It's a powerful desire to feel wanted and special.
But isn't it a little manipulative to use these questions to make someone feel that way?
It's definitely a gray area. It raises questions about authenticity and free will.
Yeah, if you're using these questions to engineer someone's feelings, is it even real?
That's a good question to consider. And it's something to keep in mind as we go through these categories.
Okay, good point. So what's next?
Let's see. The Wheel of Obsession. This one's interesting.
The Wheel of Obsession. Okay. I'm intrigued. What's that all about?
So this one claims to make a man so fixated on you that he's constantly seeking your attention and showering you with affection.
Like he can't get enough of you.
Exactly. It's like dialing his infatuation up to 11.
I can see how that would be appealing to some women, especially those who crave that constant reassurance.
It's like having your ego stroked nonstop.
Right. But for some women, that might feel a little suffocating.
Definitely. Not everyone wants that level of attention.
And what about boundaries? It seems like this category is all about blurring the lines between healthy and unhealthy attachment.
You're right. It's more about control and possession than genuine connection.
Okay, so Wheel of Obsession is a bit of a mixed bag. Let's move on to spontaneous desire. This one seems to be about reigniting the passion in a relationship.
Yeah, they claim that this category can make a man physically crave you, even if he's been emotionally distant.
So bringing back that honeymoon phase feeling?
Exactly. They talk about him whispering sweet nothings and wanting to worship you from head to toe.
Okay, that sounds pretty steamy. But can a few questions really change someone's feelings that drastically?
It's a big claim. While communication is important in relationships, I think this program is oversimplifying things a bit.
Right. It's like they're suggesting you can bypass any underlying issues and just jump straight to passionate bliss.
Yeah, but that's not how real relationships work.
True intimacy takes time and effort and a willingness to communicate openly.
Absolutely. It's not something you can just conjure up with a few magic words.
Okay, so spontaneous desire might offer a temporary spark, but it's not a long-term solution. Let's move on to the breakup U-turn. This one seems to be for those who are trying to get back with an ex.
You got it. This category claims to make your ex crawl back to you begging for another chance.
Really? How is that even possible?
They say it worked by triggering memories of past happy experiences and reigniting those feelings of love and obsession.
So appealing to nostalgia and that feeling of the one that got away.
Exactly. It's a very powerful emotion, especially after a breakup.
But relationships end for a reason. Is it really healthy to try to force something that's already run its course?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's better to accept the situation and move on.
Right. Trying to manipulate someone into coming back might not lead to genuine happiness in the long run.
It's important to focus on healing and moving forward.
Okay, so breakup U-turn might be tempting for those who are heartbroken, but it's important to proceed with caution. What about this next category?
Let's take a look at delicious penetrative.
Delicious penetrative. Okay, that's an interesting name. What's that one all about?
Well, it's about making a man feel like you're the one, even if he hasn't developed strong feelings for you yet.
So even if he's not that into you, you can use these questions to make him fall head over heels.
That's what they claim. They say it works by planting this message in his head over and over again that you are his destiny.
Like subliminal messaging.
Kind of. It's like trying to bypass his conscious awareness and work on a deeper subconscious level.
That sounds a little sneaky.
It definitely raises some ethical concerns about consent and manipulation.
Yeah, it's not really fair to try to influence someone's feelings without their knowledge.
And it could backfire if he ever found out he might feel betrayed.
So delicious penetrative is a hard pass for me. Let's move on to something a little less ethically questionable. What about lovey-dovey?
This category is all about turning a casual fling into a committed relationship.
So going from Netflix and chill to happily ever after.
Exactly. They claim these questions can make a man go from seeing you as just a fling to wanting to spend the rest of his life with you.
Wow, that's quite a transformation. But is it realistic?
I think it's important to be honest with yourself and your partner about your expectations.
Right, communication is key. If you want a committed relationship, you need to talk about it openly.
Trying to manipulate someone into commitment is not a recipe for success.
Okay, so lovey-dovey might be tempting, but honesty and communication are still the best approach. What's next?
Let's explore two to tango. This one is about solidifying a relationship and dealing with those fears of abandonment.
Okay, two to tango. It sounds like it's all about building a strong foundation. What exactly does it promise?
They say it can make a man feel so connected to you that he'll start talking about a shared future.
Like moving in together or getting married?
Exactly. It's about creating that sense of security and stability.
I can see how that would be appealing, especially for people who have been hurt in the past.
It's natural to crave that feeling of safety and belonging.
But again, I have to wonder about the ethics of it. Is it genuine if you're using these questions to engineer those feelings?
It's a valid concern. It's like using a cheat code to skip ahead in a relationship.
Right, you might get to the destination, but you haven't really earned it.
And it might create doubt and insecurity down the line.
So two to tango might sound like a quick fix, but it's important to consider the long-term implications. What's next?
The last one is a virus of love. This one is for when a guy seems to have lost interest after a first date.
Virus of love. Okay, that's a catchy name. What's the idea behind this one?
So they claim this question can reignite his attraction and make him crave you physically and emotionally.
Like a second chance to make a good impression.
Exactly. It's about bringing him back from the brink of disinterest.
But again, it all comes back to authenticity. Is it real connection if it's sparked by a carefully crafted question?
That's the issue with this whole program. It's trying to reduce human emotions to a set of manipulative techniques.
Right, like there's a magic formula for love.
But real relationships are more complicated than that.
Okay, so virus of love might be tempting, but it's important to remember that there are no shortcuts to genuine connection. What about those bonus materials they offer?
Oh, yeah. They include a true love report, a man training manual, and a male mind explorer report.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with the True Love Report. What's that all about?
This report claims to make a man completely love-struck with you.
Like head over heels in love.
Exactly. They compare it to a child obsessing over ice cream.
So he'll be totally smitten and thinking about you all the time.
That's the idea. But it seems a bit simplistic, don't you think?
Yeah, reducing love to a childish craving. It doesn't really capture the complexity of real love.
And it also raises questions about the power dynamic.
Right. Is it healthy for one person to be completely obsessed with the other?
It's not a recipe for a balanced and equal relationship.
Okay, so True Love Report is a little iffy. What about the man training manual? That one sounds kind of concerning.
Yeah, this manual is based on techniques from animal training.
Wait, animal training? Seriously?
That's what they say. They suggest using nonverbal cues and body language to influence a man's behavior.
That's just wrong. It's dehumanizing to treat someone like a pet.
I agree. It completely undermines the importance of communication and respect.
Okay, man training manual is a definite no-go. What about the Male Mind Explorer report?
This report claims to give you a deep understanding of a man's thoughts and feelings,
So you can read his mind.
basically.
Sure.
But again, it raises concerns about privacy and manipulation.
Is it ever okay to try to read someone's mind without their consent?
And wouldn't it be better to just have an open and honest conversation?
Exactly. So the Male Mind Explorer report might seem tempting, but it's ultimately not a healthy approach to relationships. Okay, so we've covered all the different components of the Guy Magnet online program. What are your overall thoughts?
Well, they're definitely good at marketing. They know how to tap into our desires for love and connection.
But their methods are pretty questionable.
It's all about manipulation and control.
And I think it's important to remember that genuine love can't be forced or tricked.
It has to come from a place of mutual respect and understanding.
Well said. So what happens if you actually try to use these techniques? What are the potential consequences?
That's a great question, and it's something we need to discuss in more detail.
All right, so we're back. And we've been talking about the Guy Magnet online program and all the promises they make, but now it's time to get real. What happens if you actually use these mesmerizing questions? What are the potential consequences?
Yeah, that's the big question. Even if these techniques work exactly as promised, what happens next?
Right, because getting a guy to fall for you is one thing, but building a healthy and lasting relationship is another.
Absolutely. And using manipulation and control to get what you want is not a recipe for a happy ending.
So let's say you use these questions and you successfully trigger all those obsession chemicals in a guy's brain.
Yeah.
He's totally infatuated with you. Now what?
Well, the problem is those intense feelings don't last forever.
Right, the honeymoon phase eventually ends.
Exactly. And when it does, he's going to start to wonder why he's so obsessed with you.
He's going to question his own feelings.
Right, and he might start to feel like he's been tricked.
Like he's been manipulated into feeling a certain way.
Exactly. And that can lead to a lot of resentment and mistrust.
Which is definitely not good for a relationship.
Not at all. It can actually be quite damaging.
And it's not just about the guy either.
Right. The woman who's using these techniques is also at risk.
She's putting her self-worth on the line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because if she believes that she needs to manipulate someone into loving her, then what does that say about her?
It creates a lot of insecurity and anxiety.
Yeah, because she's constantly worried that the moment she stops using these techniques, the relationship will fall apart.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
It is. And
Correct.
it's not a sustainable way to build a healthy relationship.
Okay, so we've established that using these mesmerizing questions can have some pretty negative consequences.
Definitely. It's not a risk-free approach.
But what's the alternative? If we're not supposed to use manipulation, how do we approach dating and relationships in a healthy way?
Well, I think it starts with shifting our focus.
Instead of trying to win the guy or get him to fall for us.
Exactly. It's about approaching relationships with authenticity and integrity.
So being honest and vulnerable.
Yes. And communicating openly about your needs and expectations.
And letting the relationship unfold naturally.
Right. It's not about trying to force anything or control the other person.
It's about building genuine connection and trust.
Exactly. And that takes time and effort.
There are no shortcuts to real love.
Nope. It's a journey, not a destination.
So instead of trying to hack our way into someone's heart with these mesmerizing questions, We should focus on building real intimacy.
Absolutely. That's the foundation for a truly fulfilling and lasting relationship.
Well said. So what do you think, listener? Could cleverly worded questions really hold this much power over someone's emotions? And if so, is it ever okay to use that power to manipulate someone into loving you? It's something to think about. Hopefully our deep dive into the guy magnet has given you some things to consider.
Huh.
And remember, true love is built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine connection, not manipulation and control. Until next time.